Hey everyone, today we're going to take a look at a CoderTeam agentic application which uses 7 agents, 4 models for planning phase, GPT-4o, Gemini 1.5 Pro, Claude 3.5 Sonnet, and Deepseek Coder. It also has automatic code generation, error correction, and user feedback-driven improvements. I was able to build this 4-game-line tower defense game, which actually works pretty well, just like this. You can actually upgrade the towers too when you receive additional money. So this actually is one of the most beautiful to make. Roughly speaking, I am using unified class that I've created for interacting with any model that you would like to use. And this has a planning phase in which, actually, let me run it so we can see how this works. When you run this, we initialize the unified class for all the models. First 4 models are planning models, and we have a Sonnet coder model, and then an error fixer model, and then the code enhancer. When we run this, it asks you the number of models you want to use for planning. You can enter it as comma-separated values, or you can say all, for example. You can also continue from an existing file, but we are going to create a new project. And here you can just enter your project description. Let's say a fully featured space shooter game in Pygame, use only game-generated assets. You can enter here the number of discussion iterations for speed purposes. Let's just say 1. It also asks you if in the first round, if you like each one of the 4 models to respond independently or actually engage in a discussion, like one in a sequential manner. Let's actually say no, and then we need to enter an output file name. Let's just say space.py. When we do this, all 4 models start talking among one another. Actually, since we said no for independent responses, each one is going to respond in turn. Here is the second model. And on the third model, I believe this is Gemini 1.5 Pro. By the way, the code files for this project will be available at my Patreon. Link will be in the description. And finally, we get feedback from Deepseek coderV2, which is one of the better coding models. This never happened before, but it just decided to actually respond in JSON mode. Okay, and now we are generating the code. This is Sonnet now writing the code for us. Okay, and after it written the code, it wrote it in the space.py file, although it passed some of the methods here. Let's see what happens. It automatically ran it, and actually this is working pretty good. So you can see we have an animation for the blasts. This is pretty nice. So if we we can actually go the feedback cycle, and we can ask something like, please add multiple enemies and power-ups. When we do this, we actually get independent responses from all 4 models for guidance, and only after we have received all of this, which is being streamed in real time, Sonnet will actually, based on these suggestions, will try to improve the code. By the way, this relies on the unified.py file. We will be reviewing the code, but if you want to know more about it, please watch my Unified LLM APIs video. Okay, now we are writing the updated code. We should be ready here in a moment. From my experience, when all the models are talking to one another, usually the results can be actually pretty good, better than a single model responding. Okay, game again, and hopefully we actually hit, that was an enemy, so we had multiple enemies. Okay, but as you can see, this is the power up. Let's see if it fixed the situation. Yeah, now we are firing double bullets. This is actually nice. This this wasn't possible before. I mean, without explicitly mentioning. Now we have 3. Wow, this is actually quite a lot of fun. Wow, let me try to get this power up to see what's going to happen. Oh, not much changes. Wow, there's a lot of enemies. Okay, I'll stop right here. This is a lot of fun, though. This is nice. So there's quite a lot of different ways you can use this. Let me display it again. If I run the CoderTeam again. So You can use any one of these models as your planner, okay, by entering comma-separated values. You can also skip it and just use Claude as an autocoder. You can select all. Let's select all again, and then you can continue from an existing file. For example, we can say yes, and then it's going to ask for a file name. So we could have continued from the space.py, for example. Let's say no, and when you enter a description, just whatever, really. We're not going to run it full. You can just say one here. Models respond independently. And then let's just say test.py. You can see that the models will plan all at the same time without actually deliberating. But even when you do it like this, and if you select more than one iteration, like two, in second and consecutive rounds, they will actually deliberate and discuss among one another, even if you selected the first round to be independent. Okay, well, let's see. Let's go ahead and review the code now. Like I said, the code files for this will be available at my Patreon, connoisseur level. Link will be in the description. I would like to take a moment to talk about the benefits of becoming a patron. As some of you may know, in the last year and a half, I've spent 3,000 hours, over 300 projects. As a patron, you will have access to all the code files so you can get inspiration and iterate quickly. Another benefit is that you'll have access to all my courses. And my most recent and most proud one, the 1000x Masterclass, teaching what I've learned on how to code fast and efficiently. Also the Streamlit course and the Fast API course. In my Patreon, I also have tiers in which you can connect with me one-on-one. Check those out as well. So the coder team actually relies on unified APIs. Unified APIs class is just a class I've generated to be able to talk to any model or use any model. Comes with many methods such as setting system message, adding message, trimming message history, all sorts of stuff. If you'd like to know more about this, please do watch Unified API because I did a detailed code review there. We won't be doing it in this video. But so the default models are GPT-4o, Claude 3.5, and Google Gemini Pro 1.5 from Open Router. So you do need your Open Router API key. And we automatically detect the API keys for OpenAI, Anthropic, and Open Router in unified.py file. But you can enter them here as well. You do need an Open Router API key. Just in case if you don't know, Open Router is a provider of many models, so you can actually browse and use quite a lot of models using it's very OpenAI's library. Pretty much, it's very easy. So that's why we are importing the unified APIs and we are defining a coder team. The requirements for this is just OpenAI, Anthropic, and term color. Here in the initialization, we create a list of all models with, when you initialize the class, you can give it a name, you can specify a provider, you can specify a model. If you don't, then it'll default to 3.5 Sonnet anyway, as seen here by default. But you can actually use any OpenAI, Anthropic, or Open Router model. And then we initialize GPT-4o, and we're going to use async. All methods in unified.py have their async counterparts. And we are going to use Gemini from Open Router, and we're going to use Deepseek Coder from Open Router as well. And then we initialize a self.coder, which is going to be Sonnet 3.5 Sonnet error correction model, and the code improver in the feedback phase is also going to be 3.5. We have a method to select models. We print available models with an enumerated list, and we ask enter the numbers of models you want to use for planning, comma separated, or type all or none. And then we just handle for that, and we create the list for models. And here we have a method called getFullResponse, which is going to take in the agent prompt. So this actually, I don't know if you know, but Anthropic just made an update today saying that Claude 3.5's next token output limit has been increased to 8,100 something tokens. And I have a lot of code here which was actually trying to overcome that. Thankfully, just today they actually doubled it. You can take a look at it. I didn't get this running by the time of this video as I would like, but this was supposed to actually check if the code got cut off, if it's writing more than the output limit, more than the output limit. I was going to try to get it completed, But since actually the mixed token output is increased, so then I'm actually just, this is just a method now just to get a response. And if you look at the Anthropic's call here, to enable the 8,000 output tokens, you just have to add extra headers, just like this, Anthropic beta, and then your mixed tokens is going to be 8,192. So that's really handy. I'm so glad for this update. So, but here you may notice this. Sometimes, I don't know why, but the first message in the message history ends up not being user. I'm just making sure to check for that and then enter just 3 dots. If that's the case, just a random message there. Anthropic's, API is very picky. You can't have two of the same roles in a row and things like that. And the beginning role has to be user, the ending role has to be, user as well. It's things like that when you're making the API call. But other than that, this agent, which is going to be our, unified class, does have a chat async method, which just makes the call. So very, very convenient. And then we check if the ending slash code XML tag is in there. We just return it because we're gonna, as we'll see in a moment, we are asking it to return it in between those tags. Okay, I'll skip the commented out code, but if you download it, you can look. This was just to continue from a cutoff code completion. Now, next we have an async function to discuss the project, which is going to take in a project description, iterations, and whether the first round is going to be independent. If you don't have any models, meaning during the model selection you selected none, then this is going to return nothing. We initialize a discussion list, and then we go over the iterations which you specified in the beginning of the script when you first run it. And then we check to see that if we are in the first round and the user is specified independent first round, then we are going to actually create tasks for each model for the chat async method from the unified.py class. And we're going to use async gather with this message. Please brainstorm and plan the following project to implement all user requests. You can read this. We also give it a project description, and we create this tasks list for each model in the self.models. And then we append it to the round responses as they become available. Otherwise, then we are going to have a sequential discussion for model and self.models. We're going to have a full discussion, round responses text, and we're going to get a response from each model one by one by saying pretty much the same thing. But as you can see, we are inserting the project description plus the round responses text here and also the full discussion. So meaning in a round, when the 4 models are discussing, the full discussion will be empty, but then the round responses text will be there. But once each round is completed, then we add that to discussion.extend. And since we clear the round responses empty, meaning in the second round, beginning of the second round, full discussion will be full and round responses will be empty at first. But then as soon as the first model responds, we keep adding it. So it's quite dynamic. And then we have the generate code. So this part was all about the planning. But in the next part, we have the code generation, where after the planning process, which is going to take in project description, discussion, and a file path. This is the system message. So some useful things here is that we do not need unit tests or error handling, and information printing should be handled by print statements and by not logging, because since we're going to run this with some process, we want error messages, right, with print statements, hopefully, if the program runs good, or like with try except blocks. Do not refer to any external files. This is designed to build a single file apps, right, and wrap the code in the code tags, pretty much. And we set the system message. As you can see, unified.py makes everything so simple. You just set the system message by this .set system message method. And then we just wait to get the full response, which was the method we looked at, by passing in the coder, the project description, and the discussion. And then when we receive the code, we extract it and save it to file. And in the error correction cycle, the system messages, you're an expert programmer tasked with fixing errors. And this is going to return the code in code tags as well. We set it error corrector system message. And then we run it with subprocess right here, just like this, by giving it the file path. There's an error, we print it, and then we create a correction prompt. This is the error message and the current code. Please fix the error and provide the full corrected code. And we make another call. And we extract it and we write it. So this process is going to run under a while true loop. So this is going to run for each error until all errors have been fixed. Next up is the feedback improvement cycle. Yeah, and also remember that the code files will be available at my Patreon at connoisseur level. Link will be in the description. I would like to take a moment to talk about the benefits of becoming a patron. As some of you may know, in the last year and a half, I've spent 3,000 hours, over 300 projects. As a patron, you will have access to all the code files so you can get inspiration and iterate quickly. Another benefit is that you'll have access to all my courses. And my most recent and most proud one, the 1000x Masterclass, teaching what I've learned on how to code fast and efficiently. Also the Streamlit course and the Fast API course. In my Patreon, I also have tiers in which you can connect with me one-on-one. Check those out as well. Okay, next up is the feedback improvement cycle, which is going to take in a file path and user feedback. System message is pretty much similar. Just to ask it to improve the code, we set the system message, read the file for the code, and then here, like we said that in the feedback improvement cycle, we again ask each model for their opinion. So we create a tasks list with the chat async method from the unified.py. Here's the user feedback. Here's the current code. Provide a plan on how to best implement the changes for each one of the models, and then we await that with async.io.gather. This is going to gather the opinions of all 4 models, or whichever models you've selected. And here's an improvement prompt. So this is the user feedback, and here we join all the suggestions. So this is the team suggestions, and the current code is this. Please improve the code, and then we get a full response from Sonnet, and then we write it to file. Now in the run project method, we are going to ask if the user wants to. We first call the select models method from above, as we have seen. And then we ask the user if they want to continue from an existing file, right? So we can actually run this and continue from space.py. When you do that, we start with immediately running the code. So error correction kicks in, and then the feedback, you continue with feedback. So if the user said yes, then we ask for it to enter the file name or the path to the file. Then we try to open it, and then we call the error correction cycle. Otherwise, that means we're not continuing from the file. We get a project description, and then we ask for how many iterations of discussion for planning, and then we ask if the models to respond independently in the first round. This is if the user has specified models. Otherwise, then there is no models, and then independent first round is false. Then we ask for the output file path. We call the discuss project, but it's not going to run, obviously. I mean, there won't be any discussion because the self-taught models will be empty. Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, if there is models, then we ask for the discussion iteration and whether independent response. Otherwise, we set the iterations to 0. And then now that we have all our information, then we can actually start the discussion project. If the iterations is 0, then this won't run. And then we move on to generate code and self-error correction cycle. And once this part is done, because if there is no error, this will return true, then we move on to the user feedback cycle by continually taking feedback and then running the feedback improvement cycle. And here we initialize the CoderTeam class and we just run the project. So this is about it. So works really well. All in all, the CoderTeam, you can read. I have a README file for the CoderTeam and a README file for the unified.py file as well. But CoderTeam is a sophisticated Python application that leverages multiple AI models to collaboratively generate, refine, and improve code based on user input. Okay, so this was an exercise of me trying to create something interesting using the unified.py, and I was really loving this project, except when I ran into this part of it, where because 3.5 Sonnet is really good, and It can't output more than 350 or 400 lines of code, which is borderline, getting to its limit. And the code would get cut off. Like if you look at the tower defense game, it's 413 lines. This is definitely over 4,000 tokens. Yeah, so I was struggling with that, but this I learned quite a lot. I'll actually make a separate video on this. So I learned a lot, and I'd like to share that with you. But I'm so glad Anthropic increased the next token output with today. So I guess they didn't need that. Yeah, like I said, the code files will be available at my Patreon. I also have consulting tiers there if you want to get in touch with me one on one. Some of the higher tiers actually have 1 hour per month or 3 hours per month meeting time if you wanted to try that out. I also started weekly meetings, AMA meetings with architect level patrons. We've been doing it for the last 2 weeks, but take a look at that as well in my Patreon. That is only available for Architect Plus patrons. Also, I've been more active on X and I post some exclusive videos there as well. If you want to follow me, it's hive_echo. I would like to take a moment to talk about the benefits of becoming a patron. As some of you may know, in the last year and a half, I've spent 3,000 hours, over 300 projects. As a patron, you will have access to all the code files so you can get inspiration and iterate quickly. Another benefit is that you'll have access to all my courses. And my most recent and most proud one, the 1000x Masterclass, teaching what I've learned on how to code fast and efficiently. Also the Streamlit course and the Fast API course. In my Patreon, I also have tiers in which you can connect with me one-on-one. Check those out as well.